this next panel, I am so thrilled to welcome to the stage here at Lightbox. We have Pablo, Rodriguez-Fraile, we have Ryan Zurrer, and Andrea, Bonaceto. Three. That's right, give them a round of applause here. So this next panel we titled How to Build a World-Class NFT Collection. So you have some of the world's most prominent collectors, creators, builders, entrepreneurs, investors, and so today we're gonna break down kind of what it looks like to build a world-class collection. We're gonna talk about what they sort of look for, and then we're also gonna bring it back and connect it to what the next phase of NFTs are like, especially as it pertains to the metaverse. But just to get started, let's go down the line, and I'll have each one of these individuals introduce themselves, starting with Pablo.
Thank you for having me. My name is Pablo Rodriguez-Fraile, and I've been investing and advising in the blockchain space for several years now. And I had my first introduction into NFTs in early 2017. First through the concept of the metaverse, through the Decentraland, and then through there I shared my passion for the blockchain together with my passion for art, and I've been very embedded since the beginning in the digital art world, where I've been behind many of the names that many of you guys know since the beginning. Artists like Refik, artists like Vipo, artists like Pac, the Racing. I've been alongside. So together with my wife, we have the Artsy collection, which is widely known as one of the most significant and important digital art collections globally. I'm also the co-founder of Aorist, which is a next generation cultural institution for digital art.
Thank you, Pablo, and also thank you for all the mentorship and guidance that you provided along the way, because I'm much newer to art, older hat in crypto, been in the game a long time, and been an investor in a lot of the Layer 1 protocols that you know and love today, as well as other projects. But started getting really excited about art over the last couple of years, because having been a decade in crypto, I was very concerned in sort of 2019, 2020 that we weren't getting new entrants into the space. And no OG in the game would have predicted that art would bring us into the mainstream, but here we are. I'm incredibly grateful for the new energy and the new cohorts of people that have come into crypto because of art. I also did not predict that art would be what would bring us into mainstream. But here we are, and again, I'm just incredibly grateful for it.
Does it work? Perfect. Thanks a lot, Justin, for the invitation. My name is Andrea Bonaceto. I started in the blockchain space a few years ago, mostly as an investor. And through time, when the NFT trend came about, mostly around fine art, I also got involved as an entrepreneur. I'm one of the founders of Aorist alongside Pablo and Hina Caminos, and as well as a creator, mostly focusing on aspirational releases around programmable and generative art.
Brilliant, brilliant. We're super grateful that you guys are here with us today. I think just to kick things off here, would love to hear from each of you sort of how and why you did start collecting. I know, Ryan, you sort of started to go into that, but I think it'd be great to just go down the line here on the why behind collecting art. And also, we'd love a little insight into what your collection looks like today. It could be physical, digital, NFTs or not, but we'd love to hear about all that.
I can tell you a bit of my backstory, but for me it was very simple. I understood the technology of the blockchain rather well, and I had a personal passion for the arts, for culture. And when I realized that this innovation in technology was going to, or was already creating this explosion of talent and innovation, the decision for me was very, very, very clear. For me, an asset of the blockchain is certainly something that I will be able to. I was happy to hold, and I knew that when people realized that this innovation coming together, I knew that it was going to be something that people really thought behind. I also, in particular, for me, one of the key moments was when I realized that integration with the digital domains, in particular with the metaverse, because I do think that as we move into the future, our lives will be more and more digital in many ways. We're already, in everything we do, connected to the digital. It just makes sense that even our communications, our engagement with society happens in those spaces. So that clear interoperability since the beginning was a very big definer for me. And then with my collection, in general, I've always been very focused. I would say that I am less artist, more depth. I do think that there's a lot of talent out there, but it takes a little bit more than just talent to actually have a successful creative career. So in the same way of how and I don't do this for an investment, for a monetary purpose, but in the same way though, that I think about some investments, I do want to see artists really being thoughtful about where they're coming from, how this new release is really playing and innovating on what they have done before. How are they utilizing the medium? Because it's a big component of this. And in general, what are their plans for the future? Again, I think there's a lot of talent out there, but it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of work to actually get there. Yeah, in the collection, I like to support those artists that are really pushing those boundaries. So, big collector of Refik, big collector of Pac, big collector of People, big collector of Andrea, and many others that are fantastic. Too many to name. The ones that have a clear direction in the practice.
So, how it clicked for me is when you boil down crypto assets, fundamentally, what they are is a representation of digital scarcity. And the first use case that we tried with digital scarcity was currency, right? But really, the first to find product market fit on a grand scale is actually digital art. And this makes sense, right? For the first time, we have a way of proving provenance of a piece. And I often say to people that we should not confuse the message with the medium. NFTs are not the art. NFTs are a way, for the first time, establishing scarcity and provenance of digital art. And that's sort of the crucible moment that we've had here. And now with that scarcity, with that rarity established, we can go forward and work to put digital art into art canon, a place that it belongs. But for many
years, it has not sort of found its home in yet. And so I'm incredibly excited about the next steps in digital art. And you know, market mechanics aside, how we're going to be able to get digital art in its rightful place in the discussion of art canon. I think that's lost on a lot of people, but it's fundamentally important for culture and for society. And so, with respect to my own collection, as I am relatively new to this, I kind of took a student's approach, learned from people smarter than myself, with Pablo, and over time tried to tend towards an upper crust of quality. That I very quickly moved from collecting pieces that would say sit in my home or sit on a digital wallet to pieces that should sit in museums. And so what we do with One of One, our collector DAO, is that we hustle as hard as possible for our artists, putting them in museums. So for example, today, Human One is on display at the hallowed grounds of Castello de Rivoli, one of the most well-respected modern art museums on the planet. And we're working with many other museums around the planet to get our artists into these museums with the end goal of getting digital art into its rightful place in art canon. And that's really the driving factor. On sort of making decisions in how we look at art, I have created a heuristic. You know, because I'm a venture capitalist, I like to use simple heuristics to make business decisions. And I've created this heuristic that I call proof of artwork. It draws on the concept of proof of work, where the minimum cost of, say, Bitcoin, for example, the minimum value of a Bitcoin is the entire sum of the capex and opex that has been spent to bring the ledger to this moment. So there's a baseline, fundamental amount of resources that have gone into securing a ledger. And so I look at art in somewhat the same way, and I ask myself, how much time, artistic merit, training, collaboration, computational resources, collaboration, and so on and so forth has gone into this piece. What that does is that leaves me with a collection of art that is more technically sophisticated. It makes me miss some of the like cheeky sort of jokes on you type of art, but I'm perfectly happy to be holding a highly technically sophisticated portfolio of art that I feel is aesthetically beautiful, and I'm confident that enough resources have gone into that I can establish like a baseline floor of what's that is approximately worth.
My perspective on NFTs is the following. So I saw NFTs as a trend that could really allow myself to be more coherent with who I am. So like 2019, 2020 was a very like introspective period that allowed me to be in touch with many creators. So basically the collecting element, you know, that I had was really connected with people that I considered as friends, and I was supporting in the early days when I was also myself in the process of creating art. The way I see it evolving is on considering NFTs, I mean, as Ryan was saying, like as a mean and not really as the end, like as a tool to deliver a context, like a content that should be very profound. And I think that we are basically now past the first generation of NFTs that are just like representations of like JPEGs on blockchain, and we're moving into NFT as a sort of additional brush in the hand of the creator, where the creator can really be extremely crazy. And I think I see a lot of potential also with platforms like Mona, where we bring the NFT experience into another level in terms of interacting not only with like a 2D object, but even with a space. You know, we can interact, you know, with this the representation of this room in the metaverse. This can really be like an experience that can be delivered and can be collected as well. So I'm very bullish on the path forward, and I think that also this period in the market is actually a good opportunity to clean the market from certain bad actors that most of the time, you know, come when things are going crazy. And I feel that the next wave is going to be a very sophisticated wave of NFT creators, and as well also collectors that have like this approach, will have like long-lasting collections that are actually very historical.
That's great. Yeah, there's some really, really great insights there. Something I do want to get into before the end of this panel is really what that next phase looks like for digital art, and kind of going back to what you also mentioned, Ryan, is how to bring digital art more into this into the art canon. But first, it might actually be a good idea to sort of address, like, with the current market conditions, kind of curious, really relevant, kind of how the three of you are sort of approaching collecting, and what do you think this means, like the current market for the art market and for NFTs, and sort of like how does that impact the decisions you make with your collections as well, if at all?
That's a very tough question. I do not know. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think I don't know what is coming. What I do think is that that again this ecosystem, this period that we're seeing is going to help win away all the fake promises that we had before of just you put something in the blockchain, something of art, and it's just valuable for a second. And I also think that it will help, in particular, to really separate the buckets of the different assets. I heard in the panel before about the NFT not an asset class, but within NFTs you have different asset classes, and I think that right now we have some mixture between them. I think that this is going to help to again segment what are PFPs, what are gamings, what is land, what is art, etc., etc. And for me, that high end of the market in art is what I'm focused on. I think that's always less resilient. And in my opinion, it's going to age a lot better. I personally am not as it comes to art, I believe that the utility part of it is not an important component of the art. And I do think that again, we're going to see the best creators, the top creators from this movement, as recognized in the future as at the top contemporary artists of today. Even more so, I do see some of the artists, of the top artists of now, actually being more like movie stars or music stars, as people get embedded in collecting and interacting with culture more in the future. I am being very conservative and again focusing on less artists and the ones that are pushing the boundaries. Yeah.
So on your movie star point, I just spent last week in Basel with people, and I can assure you that they're movie star status already. So given market conditions, right? I often say to my team, it doesn't matter what you do on the micro if the macro goes against you, right? And so the reality is that all asset classes are facing a difficult time due to the liquidity crunch. That's a macroeconomic effect, and that's going to affect great things. In fact, we've been working for now 6 months to put together a Christie's auction for the benefit of MAPS, which I encourage you to all go and take a look at the exhibition over at Christie's later this week. And it's filled with 30 of the top digital artists on the planet. It's extraordinary pieces, and if I have to buy every single piece, I will do it. So this is the moment that I will stand my ground in the name of high quality digital art, and let the chips fall where they may.
Congratulations, by the way. It's impressive curation that has led to that. It's really the top artist and amazing works.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As I've been saying for a number of months, these are the natural ebbs and flows of new emerging industries. The Gartner hype cycle has been around for 50 years, and that company's worth a couple $2 billion, all based on that formula. And this happens. You go through hype, you go through trough of disillusionment, and then you find path of sustainability. That path of sustainability is always an order of magnitude higher than the hype ever was. And so, for many things, we are in the trough of disillusionment, and as long as you stick to this upper crust of very high quality and believe in what you're buying, you're going to be fine in the long run. And so I'm hopeful that people are taking this opportunity to return more to the art and less to the market, because that should be driving your decisions. And in fact, in focusing on the art, it paradoxically will legitimize our space much more than higher market prices will. Because again, having spent last week in the traditional art market at Basel, a lot of the reservation that exists among the traditional art market is the over-financialization of the discussion here. People describe it as being bullish or bearish and use a lot of financial metrics, and there's something lost in the art. And so if we can use this time, this trough of disillusionment that we're going through, to refocus around high quality art, I think everybody is going to be just fine. And again, this is my 4th cycle. I've been in the game since 2012, and just to share a few lessons, just relax, breathe out. These like sharp downturns are not the moment to start running around with your hair on fire. Just stick to what we're doing. You know that this is going to be a part of culture going forward. I used to say, well, the reason I've been saying that, until 2021, crypto was a cult. And in 2021, driven from amazing artists like Beryl here, crypto became culture. And that is a story that is not ending, right? That hasn't stopped here because Bitcoin is down. We're going to be just fine. Just keep the faith and keep moving.
I completely agree with what Pablo and Ryan mentioned. One thing I would add is the way I see the space evolving is in a condition where basically the word NFT, through the different cycles that we will also experience in the future, will gradually fade away. Meaning that, as I mentioned initially, NFT being a medium, you don't really go and talk about, oh, this artist is drawing on a canvas, is drawing on paper. It will be something that is just obvious that in a context where the majority of our life is digital. We have a digital representation of ownership for unique items. So I think the approach, in terms of creating art and as well collecting art is pretty much the same, and it's all about that if you focus on aspirational projects that are really well executed, using technology as a tool and not as the end, then you will collect and create things that will stand the course of time. And for sure, these periods, I think, are particularly difficult. Particularly this cycle, I would say that there is the perfect storm, because not only you have a bear market in crypto, you have a war in Europe, you have very high inflation, you just came out from a pandemic, so there are many conditions that are coming all together, but still it will follow, a cyclical dimension where if you hold on and you keep focusing on creating high quality projects and collecting high quality creators, I think you'll do very fine.
One quick thing, on taxonomy. So I think you guys have been dancing around this question of taxonomy, and this is something that I think everybody should be thinking through, the taxonomy of NFTs. So there's fine art, and there's algorithmic art, and there is 10K PFPs, which are more of a social club than they are, say art, even though there's an art component to it. There is music NFTs, which hasn't caught fire, but is going to, because if there's anything that NFTs do, they enable artistic and financial freedom for artists, and there's no artists in the history of art that have been more oppressed than music artists, and so I think that that's really special. But then, to your point, eventually we're going to move down the line to the point where all assets are represented by NFTs. And so it's really important that for each one of you, you have the idea of the taxonomy in mind, that you're not confusing a Bored Ape with a Beeple with a real estate investment. These are all very different things enabled by this new sort of way of establishing digital scarcity.
Yeah, to a little bit what you're saying, it's very important, the utility component for art, and that, please don't hate me all of for saying this, but in particular as it relates to art, blockchain is a tool. It's very important to understand it's just a tool for further engagement, for further interoperability, of course it's a better certificate of history, provenance, ownership, etc. But again, mixing all of the things around the NFT ecosystem from the art, I think it's one of the mistakes that led to the overhype and then to a little bit further fall that we've seen.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the taxonomy of it as well. I think that's really important. You referenced a few things in there, some special things going on with music NFTs. I would love to, we have a few more minutes here, I would love to get a little bit deeper into this next phase of digital art specifically. Even as that pertains to the metaverse and virtual worlds. And this might also be a good opportunity if Pablo and Andrea would also like to discuss Aorist and the work that you're doing there with your artists on your platform. But yeah, how did the three of you see this sort of next evolution of NFTs? I know you mentioned, algorithmic, you mentioned music, and where does the metaverse fit into all of this as well?
Yeah, that's a great point. We should talk about Mona, because of just how many great things that Mona sort of closes the loop for on us. One of the most challenging things is display, so that people can enjoy this art and sort of understand it in a greater context. And so the work that you're doing is a great enabler of that. And as somebody who holds art, I want it so that I can share my art with both friends and the world at large. And these are really important. However, there's a couple of things that I'll make some bold predictions on. One is that the metaverse is not going to happen by putting a computer on your head. Generally, people are going to want to use their faculties. They're going to want to move around in space. And so things like projection and other mediums of consuming digital art beyond the isolation of just the visual, I think is really important. And that's why the multimodal platform that Mona is designing, I think is the right step forward.
Okay, yeah, I'm 100%, so I'm a huge fan of everything that Mona is saying, but a little bit about the future of the question you're saying as it relates to art. I think that we need to recognize that 95% of the volumes from OpenSea are really done by 5% of the wallets. We need to realize that there's an impression that everybody's really coming in, there's more and more volumes, but the reality that we're not really bridging to that general, in my opinion, to the general audience that wants to come in and unfortunately it just doesn't have to. I think that one of the big changes that we need to learn as an industry is the user experience. Right now the infrastructure is just not set up. If you're not a PhD in blockchain, you don't even know where to search. Let alone how to do a transaction. It's too expensive, too difficult. It's just not the way forward. I certainly think that, again, utilizing blockchain as a tool, but making those rails super easy for anybody to come in and participate. I just focus in particular in the art.
So, like 2 points, like on the metaverse, I think that basically people have, I think at the very beginning, the misconception that the metaverse is just the world that we live in, digital. But the way I see it is the dimension of the imagination that goes into digital. So basically, you know, if you're a human being into the metaverse, you want to be, I don't know, something completely different. You want to be, I don't know, a dinosaur. You want to interact with like a house that is not a house, a castle, or like crazy things, right? So I think there is that dimension that people will need to discover what kind of identity they really want to have that is not the real identity, and then we need to translate that into digital words. And one element that I also feel is very important is the possibility to actually interact with these words. So a situation where it's not a static reality, because reality is actually anything but static, right? And you want to be able to change, to affect things, and I completely agree with Ryan that like the dimension of the screen, you know, the solution of putting like 4K screens in your face, it's probably not the long-term trajectory. Also because, I mean, I'm sure that most of you have tried Oculus and headsets, like after like 1 hour and a half, 2 hours that you're in it, you start getting dizzy. Instead, you know, if, for instance, you have ever experienced also the sort of like these infinity rooms that also artists like Refik are putting together, you will see that they give you a way more immersive experience, where ideally, you know, if you can also walk around and see things moving, I think it provides something that is more appealing. And then on the NFT, you know, standpoint, outside of the metaverse, is basically what I was mentioning before, a focus on the very aspirational, well-thought releases on anything, where the NFT is a tool. It's just something that you can change, and it can be a creative means. I can give you an example. A platform that I'm very close with is a blockchain platform called Algorand, and actually Aorist is also built on top of that. On Algorand, you have the possibility to go next level with programmable art. They recently released an upgrade called Arc 19, where you can have actually upgradable NFTs. So it's like everything is on chain, and you can have upgrades every day, every second. You know, transaction costs are like very slow. So then things starts, you know, morphing. They can change, and you have like a ledger that is actually showing you how things evolved. And I like the fact that this potential, you know, can keep going forever. Then you look back and you have the history of everything that happened on the blockchain. And I'm sure like the more things will come, but in general is to think as well as NFTs as something that you can change it, you can morph, and not as something static.
One quick comment. Please don't price Ethereum. Ethereum is a fantastic, amazing protocol, amazing innovation. It was never meant to be a currency. It's never going to be, with the volatility that it has, it's never going to sustain a proper market long term. Ethereum, again, is not a currency. It's a tool that we use for something else.
Not all of us are in agreement with that. One last thing I would say is, so our head curator of the one-of-one collection, Lucas, talks about how if you're making so for this is very relevant to Mona, if you're making like a sort of a metaverse gallery, don't be constrained to try to make the thing that exists in the world today. So if you're making a gallery and it has 4 walls, you've already lost, right? Like, expand your mind to be something more, and let loose, and sort of like you know, dive as deep down the rabbit hole as you can go, and use your creativity.
I love that. Expand your mind. Real quick, why don't we're at time here, so where can everyone find you? Twitter, if you want to shout out your handles.
Yeah, so I'm Kukulabongs on Twitter. But more importantly, I would encourage everybody here to check out the Christie's auction for the benefit of Maps. For those of you who don't know, MAPS is the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Science. It is the most important organization leading the fight against the mental health pandemic that we've unleashed onto our society. This auction is an incredible selection of the top digital artists on the planet who have come together in support of psychedelic science. And so go check it out, and if you can, bid between the 22nd and 28th.
I really strongly recommend. I'll certainly be there. I don't like to be bidding against you, Ryan, but I'll certainly be there. This is, again, for me, the best creation I've ever seen, actually, of a release of digital art. But yeah, my name is Pablo, and I go by Instagram or in Twitter by Pablo or Fraile. And I try to be rather responsive, so if you reach out, I'll try to respond.
For me, the best way would be Twitter. If you type my name, Andrea Bonaceto, you'll find me. It's like myself plotted with a yellow background, but my handle is Andrea Bonach. And yeah, I think that's the best way, and I tend to be quite responsive there.
Amazing. This was really an incredible discussion. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get a round of applause for them. Pablo,